Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 223. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where it is currently 94 degrees on Sunday, September 14th, 2025. September is still National Bourbon Heritage Month, where we celebrate the uniquely American spirit, bourbon. And during this month, I've set aside my blended Scotch studies, and instead I'm focusing on bourbons, specifically those Kentucky bourbons from the James B. Beam Company. We have already studied Old Granddad Bonded, the Old Granddad 114, and the new Old Granddad Bonded 7-year. And now I am turning to Basil Hayden. One common misconception about bourbon is that many people think all bourbon must be made in Kentucky. I actually had a restaurant manager tell me that not long ago, and that's simply not true. The laws governing bourbon only limit its production to the United States. Any state can, and most states do, make bourbon, especially here in the state of Texas. But no foreign countries can use the name bourbon on their whiskey. The bourbon we're studying tonight is the Basil Hayden Kentucky Straight Bourbon. This is the basic bourbon from Basil Hayden. There are several other editions though, and we'll look at one or two of them later. So just the facts. A product of James B. Beam Distilling in Frankfort, Kentucky. This 80 proof straight bourbon has a high rye mash bill, which means it has a tad less sweet taste than some other bourbons. It has the classic Jim Beam tasting notes, except it is richer, deeper, and more than twice the cost at about $34 for a 750 milliliter bottle, whereas regular Jim Beam is going to be about $14. This has the standard Beam flavors, and so I get no ethanol in this. It's a little bit more finer tuned. It's not harsh. It's just very good rye flavors, high rye flavors with the sweetness of corn. So you get the rye, the corn, the oak, maybe some orange spices. And at 80 proof though, it's still just a tad bit weak, but it is deeper and richer than the regular Jim Beam. I think it's probably been aged longer. So when I taste the Jim Beam bourbon, I get nice flavors. I enjoy the flavors, but they're only hints of flavors. It's like it's promising something that it can't deliver. It's just too watery and thin. But here, the promise is fulfilled. I gave this bourbon a 90 on my score. Letter grade for drinkability, A+. My recommendation. In reading and watching reviews of this bourbon, one common theme is that this is a beginner bourbon, an introductory bourbon. And it's a good starter bourbon, that's for sure. I get that. But I'm still liking it a lot and saying that it will be a standard here at the house along with the Old Granddad Bonded and 114, which are not beginner bourbons. And right beside Nom Creek, again, not a beginner bourbon. I like them all. The advantage of this 80 proof bourbon is that in a cocktail, it is easily shareable with my wife and anybody else who might be a little proof sensitive. This is over twice the price of Jim Beam, but I think it's worth it. It fulfills the promise of full flavors. So if you like a high rye mash bill and tend not to want the super sweet bourbons, try Basil Hayden. I think it's a keeper. So history. Jim Beam introduced this small batch whiskey back in 1992. So it's, over 30 years old. It was named for a famous Kentucky distiller whose family eventually produced the Old Granddad Distillery and the brand which Jim Beam eventually bought or assumed, or whoever owned Jim Beam also bought it. That's how the business works. The other Beam small batch bourbons, though, include Knob Creek, which starts at 100 proof, and Booker's and Baker's, which are both higher proof. So for history, 5 out of 5 points. Bottle, label, and marketing. Now, the actual bottle is pretty normal. It's got a straight but tapered neck. It's got a plastic cork with a wood cap. The label, however, is one of the best I've ever seen. And so they really try to spruce up this label, and who knows how much money they spent in just the label, but it's designed to look like old parchment. You know, the little bit of a raggedy edge going on there. See that? And kind of it's an off-white color, designed to look old. Uh, the metal band and the belt buckle, I mean, really. So you know, this is fancy pants bottle, but I think it's well done. It's classy. It's artful. I think it's well thought out. It's attractive, and it's designed to attract primarily younger people into trying a beginner bourbon. Now, I've not seen any advertisements for this whiskey, even after doing a mild search, but word of mouth in the whiskey community is pretty strong, and so I have heard of this whiskey for many years, but only bought this brand this year. And again, I've heard it described as a beginner whiskey. For bottle, label, and marketing, though, 4 out of 5 points. Appearance. Here it is in the glass. That's a nice gold headed towards bronze color going on there. And again, looking at the monitor, it looks lighter in the monitor than it does right in front of me. So this is copper, maybe, you know, headed towards bronze. And then in the bottle, it looks darker. A little bit darker there in the bottle. So for appearance, I'm giving it 3 out of 5. Composition. The mash bill that I've seen, you know, and when you get these mash bills online, you don't really know for sure how accurate they are, but I've seen this repeated several times, is they say it's the same as the Old Granddad or Knob Creek mash bill. 63% corn, 27% rye, and 10% barley. And it's labeled as a straight bourbon, and there's no additional note of an age statement, so it is likely it's at least 4 years, but some reviewers say that it used to be 8 years, and now it's probably down to the 6 or 7 year mark. For composition, though, I give it a 14 out of 15. Now let's nose the whiskey. Corn, in fact, cornbread, I think. Cornbread with molasses. Mildly sweet, spicy. Oak. It's not a real strong nose, but the fact that I can smell anything is pretty impressive. Normally with bourbons, I can't smell them very well. My nose is just deficient. Generally ryes and scotches or Texas whiskeys I can smell, but Kentucky bourbons I have trouble with. But this has got a very pleasant nose. My normal score for nosing is a 7, but I'm giving this an 8. All right, let's taste it. Again, it has the standard Jim Beam flavors that you find in the Jim Beam white bottle. And you also get some of this in Old Granddad, but the Old Granddad is pretty rough, which I like. I mean, like I said, Old Granddad is the standard with me. This is definitely more refined. It's fine-tuned. It's not harsh. You're getting really good flavors, but no ethanol. You get a very good high rye flavor going on there. Cornbread with molasses, maybe. Hints of orange spices coming in as well. You know, when I taste Jim Beam bourbon, I get some nice flavors, but only the hints of flavors. Here, they're fulfilled. This is not, even though it's 80 proof, it's definitely richer feel than regular Jim Beam. And so 23 out of 25 for tasting. And the mouthfeel is definitely, you know, richer, like I said, more oily. even though it's only 80 proof, and it's surprisingly rich. The burn, I think, is quite mild and only focused in the mouth. There's nothing that goes up, nothing that goes down. And so it's like I said, people consider this an introductory whiskey because it's so gentle. And I would agree with that. Finish leaves a bit of the spices, some wood, a little bit of a burn lingers. Some of the other reviews I've read said that it had, like a zero finish. I mean, just immediately gone. I'm not finding that. I think it lingers for quite a while. Again, so many people spend so much time drinking high proof stuff that when they come to a lower proof whiskey of either Scotch or bourbon or rye, it just, their palates are wrecked. I really try to drink the whole spectrum. I've got several high proof bourbons that I really enjoy, but I also have some 80 proof bourbons that I enjoy. And so to me, the mouthfeel burn and finish, this is a 13 out of 15. Now, neat or mixer, I definitely love this neat. That's my preferred way. I think at 80 proof, there's just no way I would enjoy this on ice. I think that would dilute it too much. However, I have made an old fashioned with this, and I used maple syrup primarily, especially with a high rye bourbon like this. And I did use Angostura as well as orange bitters and an orange peel and a couple of Luxardo cherries and 5 little ice cubes. And that old fashioned really turned out good at 80 proof. It was a cocktail my wife would enjoy. So let me put this on pause and then I'll go make another cocktail and come right back. Okay, I am back. And what I did is a bourbon and ginger. So I've got some Fever Tree Ginger Ale here. And cut up a lime, squeezed a little bit of lime juice in there. So I got a lime cut in half and some ice. And then a couple of ounces of the Basil Hayden. And here we go. Now, I made this bourbon ginger cocktail a couple of weeks ago or a week or two ago, but I did it with Old Grandad, and Old Grandad, of course, was 100 proof, and that turned out pretty good. This one pretty much completely hides the Basil Hayden, and so I'm just not real sure about this cocktail. I mean, it's pleasant. There's nothing bad with it, that's for sure. And it's a refreshing drink. Let me see if my wife can taste this and see what she thinks. Okay, I am back, and the wife does like this. I suspected she would, and she can taste a little bit of the bourbon. For me, I think my palate is so used to higher proof stuff that when I mix a low proof in here with the ginger ale, I totally lose the bourbon flavor. Now, there's nothing bad about this cocktail. I mean, it tastes plenty good to me, but I don't really get the bourbon flavors. Okay, those are just overridden by the Fever Tree ginger ale. And Fever Tree, as ginger ales go, to me, its flavor is milder. I kind of prefer Canada Dry. Is what I usually use, but everybody convinced me, oh, you got to try Fever Tree. So I've been trying Fever Tree and not really liking it. So I probably won't. I'm going to go back to Canada Dry. But there's nothing wrong with this cocktail. I mean, it's okay. But it works for me. It works better with 100 proof like Old Grandad. But if you're sharing it with your wife, this is good. So neat or mixer, I'm going to go ahead and say 5 out of 5 points. But just with 80 proof whiskeys, I need something a little bit more bourbon focused, and an old fashioned is probably going to be the best for that. Probably a Manhattan would work if you like Manhattans. I'm not a fan. So, and I've not tried a Boulevardier. I need to work on that one maybe. So 5 points for neat or mixer. Price, value, and availability. Total Wine has this for $33.99. Specs $33.97 and Goody Goody $33.99 here in Fort Worth. And I think this whiskey has solid value at this price. Although many say, well, 80 proof is a disappointment or it's just for beginners. I don't listen to stuff like that. Do you enjoy it? Then it's good for you. I enjoy this. This is going to be a standard. I mean, I like the whole Jim Beam lineup. And so this is better than the white label Jim Beam bourbon. Much better. Is it twice as good? I think so. Yeah, twice as good. And again, I like the Old Granddad line. I like the Knob Creek line. I like the other Jim Beams, like the Double Oaked or the Black Label. So to me, I mean, that really hits me in my flavor zone. So I'm a fanboy. I admit it. So price, value, and availability. This is widely available, and the price and the value are okay. So 10 out of 10 points for price, value, availability. Bonus points, I think this is a new favorite, so 5 out of 5. Giving me a total score of 90 and a letter grade for drinkability, an A+. My final analysis and recommendation. Again, in reading and watching reviews of this bourbon, the common theme is, well, it's a beginner bourbon, introductory bourbon, it's a good starter bourbon. Sure, I get that. But here I am, still liking it, and I like all the higher proof stuff as well. So, it just depends on your palate. Is your palate broad enough to like 80 proof as well as 114 proof? Yeah, mine is. And so that's why I keep 80 proofs around. So, it just depends on the brand and the expression. Bourbon snobs are usually also proof hounds, and don't let them influence you. If a bourbon is good at 80 proof, it'll probably be good at 100 proof. So, is an 80 proof good for beginners? Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think it's very worthwhile for somebody like me who likes a broad spectrum. And again, if you make a cocktail with it, you can share it with somebody who's a little bit more proof sensitive. So if you like that high rye mash bill and you tend not to like the super sweet bourbons like maybe Old Forester or Maker's Mark or Larceny, try Basil Hayden. To me, it's a keeper. Now, I'll tell you something I wish. I wish they had an 86 proof edition of this. Absolutely. All right. Conclusion. Next up. This next week I've got a weird work schedule and then I'm traveling some. But I do hope to put out a video on the 18th to celebrate the United States Air Force for their birthday. And in that video I do hope to review a movie. A Gathering of Eagles, starring Rock Hudson, and then I will be sipping on Starlight Distillery Old Rick House Straight Rye. This is Stab the Dragon, out here.